To all of our beautiful, wonderful, underpaid teachers out there. This episode is for you. I know that this time is so difficult, not just for the teachers, but for the administration and for the parents, but especially for our children. It's such a confusing time. And last week I had brought on two pediatricians. I think you'll really benefit from hearing just a few clips from their episodes last week to give you maybe some sense of peace, at least some gratitude of others showing for all that you're doing during this time. We've always been grateful for you, but certainly not as much as right now. I mean, it's the understatement of the year that you guys have your hands full with all of the different navigations of what COVID-19 has brought. We thought it was bad when, we were having those shootings at the school, right? Shootings, pandemics, like what else can you handle? You're amazing, and I am forever in awe of you. And I hope that this episode will at least bring you a little peace. Thank you for all you do.
And, in schools, a lot of what we have, been under the impression, it's been ADHD, could be, a lot of other different things. Unfortunately, when we have a child who may not be learning or who might be getting into trouble, that's going to be one of the first things that, that might be brought up. Oh, maybe they have ADHD. But, a lot of it, a child who has anxiety, could be acting out because they don't want to do whatever it is you're trying to get them to do. A child who, is depressed, maybe, inattentive and sort of sitting back, and you might say, oh, maybe they have attention deficit, or they may have some or the other sort of learning disability. So, one of the things that I, work for is to make sure that we have an accurate diagnosis. And so that is, one of my, primary goals, because, of course, with treatment, you have to decide, are we going to do behavioral management? Are we going to do medication management? And that is a big decision for families to make. So you want to make sure you have it right. Right. And imagine those kids with IEPs and 504s, 504 plans that, where in school they had all of, these resources. So now families are left trying to figure it out as far as, how am I going to get the same help if my child is doing school at home?
Yes.
So there's a lot happening currently.
A lot. And now with, I know Cooper just started back today. Today's his first day back in school. He goes to a private school, and, is a lot of fear, not so much for him, more for me, that he's going to walk into a place where there's a good chance that he could contact COVID-19. And we're just going to have to wait, but to know that if I needed to speak to you, I could right away. Is exactly. a huge gift and a huge blessing. So I have just decided we're going to do a part 2. I want everybody that has questions, specific questions, I want you to put them in the comments below, or even if you're just listening on the podcast, in our show notes, they have a way to contact me and ask any question. And then the next time you come on, we can have a great conversation and get more specific about the questions that everybody has.
Yeah, that would be great. That would be great.
Dr. Hardin, thank you so much.
Thank you. Thank you for having me.
Yes.
One funny thing about my daughter, she started school today as well. She started the St. Pete College dual enrollment program. So their classes started today, but her school starts next Monday. So today she's like, she says, school? I have school today? I say, yes, your class starts today, right? She goes, oh, college, that's the same as school? I'm like, oh, yes.
Oh my goodness.
Come on. And it's been sort of, trying to, even because kids have been at home since March. right?
Yeah.
They've been at home since March. So now, we've got to sort of get them back into the routine of going to bed at night, getting up every day and focusing on school, right? So,
Come on, are you kidding? At 10 o'clock last night, we got a phone call from Cooper. He stayed at his mom's last night. Like I mentioned, he's my stepson. And he
uh-huh.
asked how he was getting home. I'm like, come on, kid. You're 16 now.
Right.
Figure that out on your own. Not 10 o'clock the night before we go to school, but really and truly, I say that, but we even have to be a little more patient, even more so today, because the kids have been at home.
Yeah.
And going back into socialization, they're going to be so excited to see their friends.
Mm-hmm.
How are we going to keep those masks over their noses? I have no idea. But we'll all work together as a community. Thank you. So, Dr. Greg Savel, what are your thoughts on all this?
Well, here's the deal. I mean, obviously, we are communal creatures by nature. There is great benefit for people being in school. Some kids are self-starters and self-learners. And so at the end of the last school year, when everyone went home in March and finished the school year, certainly there were some people who thrived. There was a small percentage of the population that didn't miss a beat. But let's be honest, the majority of people failed miserably, maybe not in the numbers, but just didn't do well. So there's value in kids going back to school, but here's the problem. We're not going to get political about it where, some people think the young should go back to school. I know, I'd like to hold up some pictures, but.
He says, I don't want to get political. He's dying to, but I appreciate you not doing that.
That's why I'm on tonight, because if something terrible happens to somebody, I have an alibi. No, but the point is that here's the problem. A mother comes in today. Yeah. And she says that she and her husband are working outside the home, and grandpa, who has COPD and on oxygen, has to pick the kids up from school. It's one of these schools that doesn't have buses. It's one of the schools where you have to bring your kid in and pick them up. So I told them what I tell everybody else. The kids go back to school, whatever. They're not going to get sick. And if they have COVID-19, most will be asymptomatic. However, every child in school from the age of pre-K, VPK, whatever, to 12th grade has the potential to be the typhoid Mary of that family.
Ooh, typhoid
and
Mary.
So, when the car line comes and grandpa's there and everybody's rushing out of school at Berkeley or wherever, the kids get into the car and they'll never in their life have more germs on them than at that moment. And you must consider that 100% of the kids getting into a car have COVID-19 on their bodies until proven otherwise. It doesn't matter that kids don't get sick or kids don't get that many people sick or whatever you want to believe about that. They're full of germs. And so what I say is you've got to get out of the car. Now you get out of a car line and you know what happens. The dirty looks, school pickup goes from 25 minutes to 25 hours.
Right.
But you've got to be carrying some spray that kills germs. Hard to come by, but you've got to go out and spray that kid down, and then you've got to drive home with the windows open. Hopefully it's not raining. It's going to be 1,000 degrees. The problem is that people say, oh, as soon as my kids get home, we're going to go into the shower. Okay, who cares? You're going to have all those germs on you for the 5 or 25-minute ride home. And that's where the danger occurs. And the kids should wear their masks at home all the time, in case they're the asymptomatic carriers of the coronavirus. And so I think most people believe school won't stay open that long. I mean, I'm hoping to be wrong about that. When the teachers get sick, what's the threshold to close any school? What will Berkeley do? If 2 teachers test positive, 3 students, 20 students, I mean, that becomes the issue. So you tell your friend that kids need to be in school, but you better hose those kids down when they get out of the schooling environment to make sure they have the least number of germs on them to transfer to the parents that day, even the ones with the normal immune system, let alone those with kidney disease who may be on immunosuppressive therapy or whatever.
So, my whole philosophy was like, I'm not really so concerned about myself. I'm pretty healthy. I'm very concerned about my parents.
Well, that's the problem with the school. You have your people like your parents, of course, who have done a great job taking care of themselves. And then, somebody says, little Bobby and Susie have to be picked up from school. We'll go get them.
Yeah.
Not because they're suddenly become foolish, but they're like, oh, we'll do anything for the grandchildren, not realizing, didn't you just try to keep yourself alive for the past 5 months? And now in an instant, you've made a terrible decision. And we can mention it here. My father passed away recently at 90, but he died of coronavirus.
Yeah.
He was doing fine. I mean, he was in bad shape. He was 90. And a healthcare worker who had been coming to their house for months, helping to bathe him and take care of him. And my parents loved this woman, did not ever wear a mask. And then called and said she'd been exposed. And my father developed symptoms on one day and he was dead the next. And yes, your people out here will say, but he was 90 and that's why he was at risk. Yes. But if my father didn't get coronavirus, he'd be alive. And while his quality of life, the point is that it takes the elderly very quickly.
Yes.
And my father was in great shape. He was just having a bit of dementia, but he had recently had a clean checkup. But coronavirus still killed him in 24 hours. So this is the problem when grandma, even without COPD or whatever, is getting in the car to pick up the kids because mommy and dad are working. And this is what happens, People have got to be smart.
I really want, because I know there's so many parents out there that are super concerned.
Correct.
What advice can you give them?
Well, I give the parents all the time. I say, listen, take care of yourself. If the ones who've chosen to keep their kids home, that's fine. The ones who've chosen to send their kids to school, that's great. We want to make sure they go to the right school because there are a few schools in the community that are not requiring masks because they, again, we're not going to get into the names of those schools, but there are a few schools in this town who are just setting themselves up for disaster because they are in those groups of people who don't believe the virus is a big deal, and that's the rest of it. But, you tell parents you have a bigger obligation when you send your kids back to school. It'd be good if they went on the bus, if that's possible. Some people say the bus is dangerous, to which I say they're in school with more people than they are on the bus. And at least when they get on the bus, you can hose them down when they get off the bus in your front yard. But if you insist on bringing your kids to school, and that's great, or picking them up, you cannot just let them get in your car. No matter what the price you have to pay to be scowled at by every person because you've broken up the car line, you're going to have to spray those kids off with something before they get in the car. And then, as I do when I get home, I have a laundry bag that hangs on the wall in the garage. I take off my clothes in the garage and I take a shower to try to keep my own family safe. Our daughter's home from med school because she was kicked out too because of the virus. And that's what you have to do. So you have responsibility and you got to do it every day. We all get tired. How often do you and I do the right thing 95% of the time? This is the time the 5% can make you sick. Right. So you have to have a plan in place to do it every day. And when you can, drive home with the windows open. If it's not raining, even if it's hot, so be it. Let the air get in there and brush out the germs if you can do it. You just have to make sacrifices to keep yourself healthy.
What about all of the people that have been talking about herd immunity?
Yeah, it doesn't really come out in this situation, People don't understand. Yeah. Right. It's going to be great if all the kids could go live somewhere on an island like Molokai with the lepers, and they could all get COVID-19, and we'd hope none of them died, and they could all come back with full immunity and give their plasma and save the life of the older people. Hallelujah. But that isn't the way life works. And so this is not the time of herd immunity. I mean, we need it, but we need a vaccine more than we need that, because while you're trying to have the COVID-19 parties, like the chicken pox parties that people used to kill them, and there are people having COVID-19 parties all the time. I mean, the amount of people who are ignorant in this country right now, showing their ignorance is at an all-time high in many ways, but we're talking about COVID-19. So the point is that, you have got to isolate yourself and not think about herd immunity and hope for that vaccine to be successful, so that in March or April, when it comes out, you have to get it. Now, what do we do with the people who they tell me every day, I'm never going to get that vaccine? Well, then we have a bus that leaves. You're going to get on it. It's going to take you right to the edge of your personal flat earth, and we're going to push you over, because that's going to become a big issue. One thing, you don't immunize your kids because you're stupid. And now, of course, people won't immunize themselves because they don't trust a vaccine. Then nobody in this world's ever going to be safe, and nothing will change in March if a vaccine is successful if people don't get it.
Let's let's take every opportunity that we can to educate people.
Well, that's what it's all about. Let's believe it. It's like that old saying, there's a lot of great cliches, but maybe my favorite that's so appropriate now is, the funny thing about science is that it's true, whether you choose to believe it or not, Yeah. And that really is what's going on here now. Protect yourselves and your families. And, kids need to be educated. We may all be. And if the kids go home and the school's closed, look at Atlanta. You saw what happened in Georgia. After all those videos surfaced on day one, every school closed the same day they opened because it was obvious that no one was ever going to be protected. The same thing might happen here. I really don't know.
So if Mackenzie was still going to St. Paul's or whatever school it was, okay, whatever school it is, and there was a choice to go to school or to go virtual, what would you have chosen for her? You and Carol. Mackenzie
is not having her best days, not being in medical school. She's a third-year student. You can't learn that way. I guess I would have sent her. My parents were alive. I was younger. I guess I would have sent her, but, I would have understood the responsibility in picking her up and what we did to at that time to try to make her safer by washing her off or to spraying her or whatever. Because I think that, kids need to be with kids. Mm-hmm. And sitting at home has not been good for so many people. Forget about weight gain and kids being even more hooked on video games and YouTube videos or whatever in a bad way. You can learn from the internet, of course, but,
How has it been in terms of the mental health for the kiddos? I mean,
well, let's talk about that. It's been terrible. Listen, you and I talked about this on the phone earlier. My dad died. My mother got very sick from COVID-19, but she lived. And then I got sick, and I was protecting myself for months, of course. But in the last 2 days before my father passed away, I was there with the hospice workers, and we were helping to clean my father, and he had to be catheterized, and my father had dementia. He was screaming in my ear, "Do you hate me this much?" No one should have to see that, but people see it all the time. It was not unique. And my father was screaming. I had my mask and stuff on, but obviously I got exposed. And I'd say I'd do it again because he's my father. I mean, had I died, I don't know that I would say that, but my point is...
Or you'd be dead.
That's right. But anyway, the point is I got sick. And I took 10 days off of work. Now, most people who know me know my dad used to own a health food store. I've worked every day of my life since I was 10. I've never been off more than 7 days since I was 10. And I took off 10 days because I had fever. I was very sick. And I was exceedingly depressed. I mean, listen, we treat depression. We're all depressed at times. We're all anxious. If you don't have anxiety and depression now, then you really are brain dead, I think. But I was exceedingly depressed. I was isolated in my room. I have a 60-year-old wife who has terrible asthma. And I thought I was going to go to the hospital. I had my bags packed, and I was talking to my friends. Should I go? Should I not go? My doctor friends. Because I didn't think I was being very objective about my own health. And I was in a very deep state of despair. And I see it every day. I mean, the kids are they're depressed. Yesterday, I was fortunate enough to be able to speak to 250 of the performing arts teachers of Pinellas County in a Microsoft Teams meeting. And what I told them is what I'll tell you now, that we need them, those teachers, because they are the gateway to the future for those children, because these kids are petrified to go back to school because they don't think they can ever learn again in a school setting. The anxiety levels at an all-time high. A lot of them have lost friends. Everybody knows somebody who's died, or everybody knows somebody who almost died, even if it's a famous person. We all know some celebrities who have passed away. So COVID-19 has affected everybody's life, if not even your immediate family. So the people are on edge. The parents are depressed. You see it in their eyes. I mean, a lot of them have lost their jobs. A lot of people are broke. The world, the political climate of the country on either side of the aisle is a disaster right now, with an election coming up. The choices being what they are. I mean, people are very depressed about everything. I mean, what is there? I mean, you're alive, you have your health, but what is there really to people to look forward to? And so school can be that thing. I always say that the individual is nourished by the group. And when you have a big family at home, the group can nourish the individual. But for a lot of people, who are moms or single moms or people who have gone back to work, the individual stays home alone and thinks about what life is worth. Mm-hmm. And so for some people, going back to school is the only way that group can nourish that individual. There's dangers, and we have to know about them. But, I think it's important because I think that we have to approach the mental health as we always do. And The schools are going to be inundated. I'm going to film a couple of hours, as you used to do with me, with Lori Matway, the Pinellas County School Board, talking about mental health issues beyond just the medical ones that'll be played in elementary, middle, and high school environments for the teachers and the students. And those, we're spread very thin. We live in Florida. We don't have state income tax. The schools don't have all the resources they need. You grew up in New York. I grew up in Massachusetts, where, the people that there were state income tax, they had more services, but people were broke for another reason. But the problem is the schools are already overtaxed. A lot of those people don't come back because they're afraid. And so, the schools are not going to have the resources. A lot of our local mental health professionals are not seeing patients in their office, and they won't establish telehealth with new patients. They will for establishments, and some of them will do it.
Are you doing telehealth, doctor?
Yeah, we do. For the right things. The first day somebody called up, my child is 2 months, they need their immunizations. Can you give my immunizations over telehealth, as God is my witness?
I love that.
And so the problem is, and this is what we mentioned earlier, that some of my partners want to do telehealth for the sickest kids. I don't think it makes much medical sense to take the people who need my hands on them the most to diagnose and talk to them over a computer screen when they're at their sickest. So we need to have telehealth established, keep some of the well people out, medication checks, certain other things. If you don't have to come in the office, let's do it over the computer.
Are you sending them to see the psychologist, the psychiatrist?
All the time, but let's be honest. I have the numbers of everybody in town, but it takes forever to get in. Even in a perfect world where everyone's working and there isn't a virus, people have 4-month waiting lists. God forbid a psychiatrist. We write all the prescriptions ourselves because, you're more likely to have the second coming of Jesus than see a psychiatrist. And I'm Jewish saying that. It'd be the first coming. But it's because they're overtaxed. Once Mackenzie wanted to be a surgeon, our daughter in med school, and then she said, I want to be a psychiatrist, please. There's such a need for people to take up the torch of the mental health community at all levels, licensed mental health counselors, et cetera, So we do refer, but it's very difficult to get them in.
It's very difficult. So it was also always very difficult for me to get a word in working with him. So I try my best, everybody. Nothing has changed. So now I've lost my train of thought because I'm so concerned about the kids. I'm very concerned about the parents. I'm concerned about everybody.
The teachers.
The teachers, my God.
Sure. Mentally and physically.
Yeah. My neighbor took a leave of absence. She's a teacher.
Of course.
How do you, it's hard enough to manage a classroom. They need to be paid a zillion dollars.
We don't pay teachers enough money to get up in the morning, and now we're asking to put their lives at risk. I had a woman in the office yesterday. She has breast cancer. She's doing okay, but she herself has a compromised immune system, but she has dedicated her life to her children. Her kids are older now. She's a single mother, but her kids are older, and she doesn't know what to do. She doesn't want to leave the school or the children in the lurch, but she, of course, has a different situation, and she is devastated that she doesn't think she can go back to teach.
What kind of advice would you give to parents that are going to be pounding on children right now about homework?
I think that they have to back off. I think parents have to reestablish a relationship. So many relationships have been strained. It's kind of a joke that says, which is going to be more likely to occur after this is over? Increase in divorces or increase in the birth rate, People have been in the homes together now, and it's been very, very difficult. Relationships are strained. People don't get along that well when they're in close quarters. But I hope the parents will realize that they themselves need mental rest and mental health help, as well as the kids. This is a time again to go back to the old days. Time to put away the electronic devices and have a dinner together at the table where everyone talks about his or her day, including the parents. And when you speak, you listen. And to understand that their kids are hurting and that they just can't get back out there. Kids are beaten all the time by their parents mentally. What are you going to do with your life? You don't have any direction. You try to convince these teenage boys about what they should be doing in the future before this, and it was difficult. But how many kids come in and say, what hope do I have? Look how you adults have ruined this earth. Forget the virus, but the racial unrest, the hating each other, No one can agree. The kids don't have hope for the future. So it isn't just the virus that's the problem. It's the lack of hope. And the parents have to understand that. A lot of them are in terrible financial circumstances because of the pandemic, and they don't have much hope. And the kids have to understand that. So it's time for less yelling and more loving. You know, it's time to cross the political aisles, shake hands, try to find some common ground, try to realize everybody wants to live and that there isn't one side or another about a virus. I don't know what it's like to wake up in the morning and think I'm better than someone because of the color of my skin or what my religious belief is. And I'd have to believe that most people don't know. But it's time to reaffirm those thoughts, not to talk to their kids because, do you see those people rioted? Or do you see these people said this? Everybody's life matters, to go and talk about that issue and to understand we've made mistakes in the past. Have that dialogue with your kids. Talk about what their fears are. The homework will come in time. People are going to have to think that the entire earth has been delayed by a year, from Mackenzie's medical school to everything. Put it in your mind that if everybody stays back a year and everything is, so it is. We're alive. Many of us are not, like my dad.
Yeah.
But we're alive and we have that. You know, we still live in a great place. We still have each other. And they have to reaffirm that and understand that the kids sometimes put up a strong face, but they're not that strong.
It's true.
The kids have to think the parents put up a strong face. And sometimes a parent admitting his or her vulnerability is the most wonderful thing in the world and starts a conversation as well.
I couldn't agree with that more. So let's have some more loving talks, more vulnerability, and let's even encourage some of the doctors, you know, to get some of their own healing, right? Because the healers.
Are you kidding me? The doctors need healing too. The things we see and we hear. Yeah. And you know me, I consider the kids my own children. I tell them that every day. 21-year-old girl comes in today and she had been abused by her boyfriend. You know, I cry myself. I feel like she's my own daughter when she tells me that, you know. And so we need that emotional healing ourselves. When physicians don't seek mental health help at times, it's something that festers the rest of their lives and can affect their physical health in a negative way as well, obviously.
Well, I appreciate the conversation tonight. As you know, in 2020, everybody has the attention span of a flea. We want to make sure that they have not checked out on us. Maybe we need to bring you back for another conversation because
anytime.
I think that this is important that we talk about and we guide people through this time of going back to school and using some of the fear. We'll have all the information about Myrtle Avenue Pediatrics in the show notes. And thank you for being here and sending you lots of love and to your family, especially through this difficult time of loss that you've experienced. Thank you.
Well, Sharon, I appreciate it. I tell you again how proud I am of you and all the people that you're helping. And I was honored that you contacted me today and wanted me to play a little small role in the wonderful platform that you have here. I'm honored to be here, and thanks for asking me.
It's my great pleasure. Ta-ta for now, Dr. Greg Savel.
Goodbye from my fancy virtual background.
So don't forget, if you mention that you have seen the show or listened to the podcast, Thai Technology, 3 months for free.